Hello, everyone, and welcome in the Cognitive Living Room. We are a new group in YouTube, and we cover stock market, we cover art, mainly painting in canvas or photography, and wellness. And today, our topic of wellness, where we talk about nutrition, diet, and keto, and everything that has to do with it. So let's jump into it. Our guest tonight is one of my old friends who did the impossible. If you believe it or not, he lost 60 pounds with keto in less than 9 months. Richard Hadvina, welcome. Hi, Richard.
Hey,
How are you
Attila.
doing?
I'm
How
doing
is
great. How are you?
the quarantine treating you in these days?
I own an essential business, so for me, it's a little bit more seamless. I'm very careful. I actually drive most of my days, so I'm isolated. When I'm at a customer location, I see no one. There's the service that we do. I pick up a product, we clean it, and we return it. And I may wave at somebody on the other side of a shop, but yeah, it is kind of surreal to drive with no traffic. LA
Oh, that's
traffic
good.
is
So you keep
definitely.
the more than 6 feet distance from other people basically on a daily basis.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if I go to a store, I wear face mask and gloves, but I keep my distance for sure.
So I know you since 1993, I guess, 1992, somewhere like 27 years now. Wow, man, that's a
Yeah.
long time. And back on those days when we were training in CSUN, you were working over there and you swam too. So I know that training, conditioning of your body was always important, but I really didn't know that you were focusing on not just the physical aspect of training, but what you supposed to and how you supposed to eat. When I came to United States in 1985, the first big surprise was for me that oh my God, it's so many fat people here. Why do you think you as a nutrition United States has, I would say, a crisis with with eating habits, or I don't know, how would you put it?
Well, it's not just a United States issue, it's a Western society issue. The United States is definitely the leader. We are a pioneer in processed food. So our history of nutrition goes back 40 million years. We have a long standing way of sustenance. And maybe 10,000 years ago, after the Ice Age, we started agriculture. Prior to that, we hunted, we fished, we mostly fished. We hunted out of the Ice Age. Um, we actually we did gather foods, berries, nuts, acorns, different leafy greens. Probably maybe 500 years ago, we really started to develop our abilities to utilize farmed food, primarily wheat. But that wheat was different back then. We used a much more, of course, ancient grain. Today, probably the closest grain to the ancient style would be emmer. That grain was very low glycemic. We didn't have the gluten content in or gluten percentage. So our bodies actually processed it. We didn't do it very often. Most of our diet was probably fatty land grazing animals or fatty fish. We would always go for probably the most nutrient dense part of the meat too. That would be the organ meats, the heart, liver, kidney, and we would definitely prioritize what the nutrient dense, and what I mean by nutrient dense is high vitamin content, high bioavailability, not the lean proteins so much. That would have been the last priority.
You know,
So we
the
also,
diet is very important for me too. And today, as 2020 passing with the virus, I try to see what I eat, and I don't know as much about the nutrition part of eating habits that you do. And I tried keto until when I could survive, and I will get back into it again, I promise. But uh, I watch the omega 3 ingredients to be in the food that I eat. And would you tell more about why is omega 3 is really good? I already know that maybe you can share from your perspective of it, and why is that benefiting us as a nutrition ingredient?
absolutely. So omega 3 is the primary fat we used to eat. Most of our fat historically has been high omega 3, EPA, DHA. It is incredible. It is a very anti-inflammatory fat. I think a lot of archaeological research or findings show that we primarily ate omega 3 based foods, and that's probably leading to our cognitive development. Our brains may have developed because we ate more of the omega 3. But today, our Western diet, we're probably 1 part omega 3 to 400 parts omega 6 in our diet. Um, what we really want is about 1 to 4. We want 1 part omega 3 to 4 parts omega 6. So
Why
that's a
is
big
omega 6
difference.
not good for you?
Yeah, omega 6 is essential, but we don't want that ratio to be so vastly different. We only need a little bit of omega 3 to offset the omega 6,
But
but basically 1 to 4.
it's upset the omega 6 in a way that basically omega 3 is bringing down the inflammation that omega 6 creates in our body, right?
Absolutely. You hit it right on the head.
Okay. So we need omega 3 in everything. So before I met you, I really didn't care what I eat and how I put it in now, because we always talk about the ingredients that the food has inside. I watch what I supposed to buy and what are the ingredients. So even the cooking oil that I choose avocado cooking oil, even if my wife doesn't like it because she says it's too thick and she doesn't like it that way. But that has omega 3. So everything that has omega 3 is bring the inflammation down, and inflammation is the major, I don't know, like a major killer for our humanity, right?
Absolutely. Well, omega 3 is not the killer. It's omega 6 coupled with very refined, rich carbohydrates.
Yep.
So that combination is deadly. So omega 3 is like you said, very non-inflammatory. Omega 3 counteracts the inflammatory aspect of omega 6. Canola oil, that would be an example of a very oxidized, highly inflammatory oil. Canola oil is basically canola that's been acid processed, which oxidizes it heavily. What you're left with is canola pulp, which is fed to chickens, and canola oil that's not clarified. So what happens is that oil actually goes through a high heat clarification process. That clarification process takes it from a black sludge to a little bit more of a clear liquid. But it is devastating. It's horribly inflammatory. It actually is probably the single biggest contributor to arterial plaque. So when you hear canola oil as being heart healthy, it's the opposite. Um, the oils that I use would probably be coconut oil, olive oil. I'm actually a huge fan of extra virgin olive oil with a low acidity, so maybe zero point 0.6 or less. That is actually probably the best oil that you could choose, and it actually does really well as far as the smoke point. So if you could find a zero point 0.5 olive oil that's extra virgin, to me, that is a superfood. Avocado oil is phenomenal as well. Obviously, um, you have some omega-3 properties. In my opinion, this is the only supplement I would ever recommend. I don't recommend supplements. I've actually learned that from a really good group of friends. You may want to check them out. They're on a website called Greek Goes Keto. They actually are huge advocates for clean keto. What that means is basically a Mediterranean style diet that's kind of leaning towards a ketogenic approach. So, cod liver oil, that was a recommendation as probably one of the few supplements that would be recommended. Cod liver oil is so high in omega-3, one teaspoon a day is plenty. They have, unfortunately, the cod liver oil, a lot of people are turned off by the fishy taste. They may burp it up later on in the day. But nowadays, they actually have lemon and mint infused omega-3 cod liver oil. You don't taste fish at all at any time. So that's my guilty pleasure. I'll take a swig of that maybe once or twice a day. And I think that could really help a lot with combating,
You know,
any of the
what's
omega-6 heavy.
interesting? I love steaks. And the doctors, people, my friends always told me, don't eat steaks. It's red meat. It's not good for you. You're going to die. And in certain ways, they are right because the steak has omega-6 and omega-9, right? It depends on how they are cooking it. But I discovered that grass-fed beef actually is healthier for you than salmon. Would you tell more about it and make it more clear? Why is the grass-fed beef is better than any other type of steak, or how that works?
Well, I mean, in terms of beef, by far, grass-fed, grass-finished, and that's really a key concept. Cows actually produce, well, their fat is a high omega-3 fat. It has a blend. I mean, it's very omega-3 rich. It doesn't have as much omega-3 as salmon, but it is far more bioavailable. We actually absorb more of a grass-fed, grass-finished beef, or to be honest with you, any ruminant animal. A ruminant animal would be an animal that grazes and eats grass. So lamb. Actually, to be honest with you,
Well, I get kicked out in my computer, so I try to connect with Richard again through Skype. So give me a second, guys. Hello, Richard. I get kicked out. My computer froze, and whoosh, I was gone from 1 second to another.
gotta
Sorry
love
about that.
technology. No
Okay, you
problem.
are back in. Cool.
Yeah.
So we were talking about the omega-3 and in a steak and in the meat, how that affecting our life.
Yep.
But
So basically, yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, we were talking about ruminant animals and how bioavailable the the grass-fed, grass-finished cows omega-3 or any ruminant animals omega-3 is. It's actually more usable than wild-caught salmon. Wild-caught salmon actually has omega-3, but our body absorbs, believe it or not, the ruminants omega-3 a little bit more. But I do have to say, I am a big proponent for most wild seafood. I think that should be probably the primary source of
Why
nutrition.
wild? Why not farm?
There are a couple of reasons. Wild, it's really about what the animals fed. So farmed salmon, for example, the feed is typically dyed. There's dye in the feed. They're fed soy, which is very estrogenic. They're fed canola pulp. They're fed tuna, very high in mercury, so it leaches into the salmon. And coloring. The orange color is from the coloring that's added in the food. So your orange color in a farmed salmon is not coming from krill, what they eat in the wild.
Okay.
It's coming from the food. So if they didn't put that coloring in, it'd be a gray color.
Now,
So it's
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, it's but the wild salmon is obviously very, very high in omega-3. It is bioavailable, don't get me wrong, but not as much as a good wild ruminant animal. I definitely I love salmon. There are many other fish that are high in omega-3. Obviously cod, shellfish, they're good, but like I said, farmed. Problem is it's not fed the indigenous food that those fish eat. I don't know if that's a correct word.
Okay,
but
so when we were talking earlier, you recommended a movie for me because the word of fat has a extremely evilish type of word in our society. And so you recommended this movie called Fat, documentary movie that people can watch in prime time or even on YouTube. I would like to play the trailer just for a movie to have a certain perspective from other people to watch this movie because it's an amazing. Then we can talk about that later. Okay. So
okay.
let me show the trailer.
I'm pissed off. The reasons that the ketogenic diet hasn't become more popular has nothing to do with efficacy at all.
In the dietary guidelines for Americans, they recommend fewer calories, less fat, less saturated fat, less cholesterol.
The history of science is full of commonsensical facts that turned out to be dead wrong when we did the science.
The question remains, what food should we eat to achieve good health?
Less sugar, less salt, more fiber.
You're telling people from different parts of the United States what to do, how to do it, and everyone's just throwing their hands up going, I'm going to do the best I can.
The myths have become ingrained in our society too strongly for people to realize they're myths.
What are some of the health myths we hear every day?
Grains are good for you and fat is bad for you.
Calorie in, calorie out.
A low-fat diet is a healthy diet.
We saw fat in the coronary arteries, and that must come from ingested fat.
There's incontrovertible evidence that saturated fat is bad.
Like hot oil down a cold stovepipe. It would just clog up your arteries and give you a heart attack.
It doesn't take long for media to pick up on these things, and we don't realize it's happening, but it's happening right in front of us.
I'm getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
And the bigger he gets, the harder his heart cells have to work. Mr. Fat, you're a real killer.
I realized that we had gotten it completely upside down and backward on fat.
Imagine someone who spent his whole career getting the wrong answer.
When you look at the arteries of people who go on a ketogenic diet, they tend to be more clogged.
Not only are you wrong, you're completely wrong. Imagine the press release you would have to write. Dear American public, we're sorry if we killed prematurely your loved ones and your parents, and maybe we're killing you. But in retrospect, we shouldn't have given the advice we did.
There are powerful forces at work that have nothing to do with good health.
This is the world we live in. This is our society. This is our community. And if we don't fix it, who will? No one will. If you think it's up to government, you're wrong. If you think it's up to industry, you're wrong. It's up to you.
So this movie is basically about nutrition and fat. I have to buy a new computer. My computer is just giving up. Sorry about that. I really apologize. So let me connect to Richard again. Sorry, Richard. I apologize. The computer is just giving up. It's like kicking his last breath or something. I don't know.
Well, my understanding is you've got a new one coming shortly.
New one coming.
That'll
That's
be
for
great.
sure. Anyway,
Yeah.
where we were is fat is good to eat or fat is not good to eat. What's your intake in it?
Well, fat is essential. Fat is very, very, very necessary. It depends on the fat. So canola oil or grain oils, so corn oil, vegetable oil, that's not good. Ruminant animals, fish that are wild, that is absolutely necessary. I lost, 60 pounds.
Oh, let me show the pictures. I have a pictures to show. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Before picture and after picture. And actually, you achieved this in less than 9 months, what is for me amazing. So please keep going.
Yeah. Well, yeah, in terms of transformation, I definitely, it wasn't instant. Let me tell you that. It's not a good lean, fast approach, although 9 months is rapid. I didn't do it for weight loss. Weight loss was just a great byproduct. It's the tip of the iceberg of all the other benefits. I did it, actually, believe it or not, for inflammation. I have asthma. Well, I had asthma. I got rid of it. I have inflammation such as eczema. Mostly got rid of it. I'm kind of fine-tuning it. There are a few foods I'm discovering I'm personally allergic to. Every human being is different. You're going to have different reactions from different macro or micronutrients.
Yeah.
So for me, my allergic foods would be primarily normal cow casein. And what I mean by that, there's an older variety of cow which uses a different type of, well, it doesn't use, produces A2 casein. Goats, sheep, or lamb, that's all A2 casein. The normal conventional cows we see in Western culture would be A1. Turns out I'm kind of allergic to that. I'm allergic to macadamia nuts. I'm allergic to too many strawberries. Everybody's different. But to go back to fat is an essential nutrient. Carbohydrates, believe it or not, are not dietary carbohydrates, are not essential. If we never have carbohydrates again, our body will produce what we need. Our brain does need a little bit of carbohydrate. We have this really unique process called gluconeogenesis, and it actually converts protein into carbohydrates. It's a very small amount. That's all we really need to energize our cognitive capabilities. So to answer your question, fat is not the demon. Carbohydrates in rich processed manifestation, that's the problem. So I'm not saying, carbs in general are devastating, but too many carbs and the wrong carbs. There's not that many good carbs out there. Grain, that has been hybridized and now GMO, where gluten is incredibly rich. We are developing allergies to gluten on such a rapid scale. Rice, it depends on the individual. It depends on your probiotic, your gut flora, on how that's processed. But for most people, it has to be very moderated. I personally, in terms of carbohydrates, my choice would be the carbohydrates in more fibrous vegetable. Asparagus would be an example.
So what you're saying that you have good fat and you have bad fat. And if you don't eat carbohydrates, because I was a carbohydrate junkie when I was a swimmer and I did kendo, and I just wanted to have carbohydrates because that's how I took in the energy. That was my energy injection on a daily basis. So the good fat would be the energy that actually helps me out to keep up with my wife.
You got she's a dynamo, definitely. It's you're going to need more fat to keep up. So basically, you're right. what we're craving, so, okay, the donut or cake or pie, we're not really craving that per se. What we're craving is the energy, the density of energy and nutrient density, those two things. That's what we're craving. Since I've done many years or several years of ketogenic eating, and we call it, my friends at Greco's Keto, we have a group of us where we consider ourselves family. We call it Keto Mediterranean Diet. So we call it KMD. But basically, that food, I would say whole foods, non-processed. If it has a barcode, it better not have more than 3 ingredients. Those ingredients better be recognizable. That food is nutrient dense. So fat, the fat is nutrient dense. It's energy. Your body doesn't spike insulin with fat, or very little, I should say. It definitely spikes insulin. Insulin is what allows your body to store excess energy, which is typically spiked by carbohydrate. So when you have a person that's actually fatter than they would like to be or should be, it's usually caused by insulin, not so much by carbohydrate, not by fat, it's insulin. That's why the ketogenic diet seems to be so favorable. It's got energy. Your body could utilize that energy very well, but you're not spiking insulin, so you're not really.
Okay, going to the insulin, what is a very good point, what you're saying. Some people believe, oh, I don't need sugar, but I have sweetener, and that's good for me. But which sweetener would you recommend that does not trigger the insulin and it's still safe?
That is a great question. So diet sodas, diet anything in the Western culture is usually aspartame, like NutraSweet, Splenda, Sweet and Low. Those are devastating, and they spike insulin just as much as sugar. You don't have sugar, but it actually, Splenda, for example, is a derivative of sugar. It will spike insulin. Does you no favors. It ruins your gut flora. It is so bad. So the mainstream sweeteners, stay away from. The sweeteners I recommend would be stevia. There's powdered, it's very concentrated. Powdered stevia, liquid stevia. Stevia is great. It's a leaf. It comes from the stevia plant, and stevia is actually a lot sweeter than sugar, and our palates actually may recognize it as somewhat bitter. You can actually offset it with a little bit of salt, and it's not quite as bitter. But I love stevia in liquids. So if I make, a liquid concoction, I love a product. It's actually called sea buckthorn. Sea buckthorn is very high in all the omegas. It's one of the few living things that actually has the complete fat profile, but it's not sweet at all. So I add stevia to it.
I use monk fruit sweetener.
Monk fruit is actually better. I prefer monk fruit over stevia. Okay. But here's the thing. Most monk fruit is a blend, and the blend incorporates, let's see, it's monk fruit erythritol. Erythritol should be taken in moderation. Erythritol could also ruin your gut flora. It will not spike insulin, but it's not optimal. But it's okay. I would say in moderation. But pure monk fruit is phenomenal. You could buy liquid monk fruit. A company called Locanto is the company of choice that I use. Pure monk fruit liquid product is actually really good.
So I hear a lot of people to say that, keto diet is the same as the Atkins diet. Would you tell us what is the difference between Atkins diet and keto diet?
To be honest with you, the true Atkins diet isn't what it morphed into. But what Atkins really kind of became is eat anything fat. So bacon. Bacon is obviously high in fat. Bacon's delicious. But there's a big problem with that. Obviously in moderation, maybe once a month or so. Bacon, I should say pork. Pork is an animal. It's not a ruminant. It's actually a scavenger. Pork will eat anything. In Poland, they found pork farmers feeding the pork crude oil, and it will eat it. And it's relative to what the pork eats. If you have pasture-raised pork that eats grass, eats insects, eats natural, like a wild boar, you'll actually be okay. But what the farmers feed the pork is literally garbage. They don't even waste canola pulp or soy pulp or corn. Most of them will feed it trash, literally, with the packaging sometimes, sugar, candy, and they will eat it. So pork, in my opinion, is not really an optimal choice. And that was actually an Atkins promoted product. I promote a more natural, wild type of fat. I wouldn't say, I call it clean keto, keto Mediterranean diet, KMD. That's kind of the approach I recommend. But the Atkins is actually a ketogenic approach. Ketogenic means you're using fat as energy. The key is it's got to be clean. It's really important. It's imperative.
Now we have this disaster. I wish we can just clean up our 2020 memories and kill the virus and upload again a brand new 2020, but unfortunately we cannot do that. And we don't have any vaccination what would prevent the virus to attack you, and we don't have any cure that if you already have a virus, the cure or any type of medication could help kill the virus or make you to live with the virus in a healthy way. So because we don't have any of those, basically we are dependent on our immune system. What can you tell us how keto diet would help with the nutrition and immune system building fighting this disease?
Well, so that's a great question, and it is true. Most clean keto practicing individuals have an immensely high immunity. I've been keto for over 2 years. I have not been sick yet. I get sick every year. I've got 2 young kids, 11 and 13 now. Every year, they bring home sickness from, the school, and I got it. I'd get a cold maybe twice a year. I have not been sick since doing ketogenic eating, clean ketogenic. But what it is so your immunity is relative to obviously your diet, the mineral content of your foods, the vitamin content of whole rich foods. That plays a huge role, and that's what ketogenic diet really does. Here's the interesting, information in terms of vegetable matter. There's vegetables like spinach. We're told spinach is like a superfood. It would be. Spinach has incredible nutrients in it, but spinach also has anti-nutrients. There basically are a product called calcium oxalate in many of the vegetable domain. Oxalates, certain people respond differently to oxalates, but oxalates are basically a crystal. It's a calcium-based crystal that actually creates a lot of issues with joints, kidney stones, and other. There are people that actually will secrete oxalate crystals out of their skin, and it's sharp and it's very very oxidizing. It actually scratches your arteries. And I'm not saying don't eat vegetables, but be careful with too much of anything. You want as much variety as you can. So you're not getting the vitamins.
So talking about the variety, we have a question and answer on the end. And I see Eliup 091977 asking your question. Where does Richard shop for food? A regular grocery store or a place like Trader Joe's or Whole Foods? And how do you shop?
You know what? Again, variety. I mix it up. So I try to order meat if I can afford it, which usually is affordable for a ketogenic person. We don't eat that much. I may have 1 or 2 meals a day. So when I eat, I try to make it quality. To answer his question, I love this website. It's called US Wellness Meats.
I shop over there too.
Oh, you do? Good.
Yeah.
I think it's a great value for the quality of meat. They sell grass-fed, grass-finished meat. They sell pasture-raised pork, pasture-raised chicken, seafood. It's really good. I recommend checking that out. I'm not obviously promoting them per se. It's just a great option. I do shop at Trader Joe's. I will go to the frozen section. I'll get wild-caught Argentine shrimp or olive oil. They have an amazing Greek olive oil that's a low acidity extra virgin olive oil. It's a Trader Joe's brand. It's relatively inexpensive and it is phenomenal. They have some pretty good options for pasture raised eggs. Whole Foods, it may be a little bit more pricey, but same thing. I find wild caught, pasture raised, grass fed. Another option would be local. I have customers that raise goats, for example. I did them a favor. I got them out of a bind, and they said, "How can I repay you?" And I knew they're into goats. I said, "Well, next time you butcher a goat, give me a rack of ribs." And they said, "They'll give me a whole goat if you got freezer space." So, you could do a lot just by going local. Go to your local farms.
I go Ralph's on every Tuesday and Thursday morning between 10 and 12 because that's when they get the fresh products from the seafood, and I get the fresh ones. Thursday morning between 8 and 12. So I have another question.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah, I have another question. 805 PC and Mac asking you, what is your theory of why American society is taught to consume processed carbs?
That's actually a really simple question. It seems almost like a loop. So I'm not a big fan of big food. That would be Monsanto. It would be the larger corporations that farm multi 1,000 acre foods. They're processing the foods into cereal. It's about money. Now, I have my own business. I'm an entrepreneur. I love capitalism. I don't like crony capitalism. I don't like when you have companies that are just so big. The only way to survive is to create unhealthy protocol for food for profit. I'm okay with profit, but I don't like it under those constraints. So to answer your question, it's probably about money. And guess what? That feeds perfectly into poor health. And what does that feed? Big pharma. So big pharma, has you're going with treating disease as a reactive treatment, and that's not the idea. You really want to be proactive. You want to be healthy, where you don't need drugs. You don't need a doctor. So before I did keto, I had asthma, eczema. I was pre-hypertensive. I had high blood pressure. I was pre-diabetic. My doctor wanted to give me statins. Statins are, in my opinion...
Those sickness are gone, right? At this moment, those sickness are gone.
Everything is gone. I don't take a single medication. I only took asthma medication. I don't need it.
That's very good.
Honestly don't need it.
That's amazing.
And I'm not the only one. I mean, that story goes long and far with other examples. Here's the thing. If you decide you want to go to a ketogenic, especially a clean ketogenic diet, you have to really commit. You can't do both high fat and refined starches, carbs. You do that, you're going to make it even worse. I don't recommend refined foods, processed foods, but basically... I definitely would recommend researching. Read the books that I recommended. Lies My Doctor Told Me. the Keto Zone diet. There's so many YouTube channels dedicated to this, and that's how I learned. I did my own research, and I was absolutely fascinated. And I actually didn't start until I really understood it fully. And here's the other tip. Once you commit all the way. Be compliant. Do not allow for a lot of cheats. You do cheats, you're really going to mess yourself up. I am at the point where I was like you, Attila. I loved carbohydrates. I was a swimmer as well. Not as profound as you, but I did swim 5 hours a day in high school, and I wanted nothing but energy. I ate a lot of carbs. I'd eat a whole pie in one sitting. It was devastating. I definitely recommend that you research it and you commit and you stay compliant. I don't even crave sugar anymore. I crave lamb.
Well, I want to talk about another topic. I mean, it's the same topic, just another version of this nutrition part, is fasting. I fast multiple times in a year. I do, in our society, we believe that, you have to eat 3 times a day, and that's normal. You have to have a big breakfast, a medium lunch, and a light dinner. That's how they're going. But I discovered as I'm eating that if I eat once a day, that actually is good enough for me. I don't have to eat more. And I do 16 hours not working totally, but 16 hours to staying up and be active. And I don't feel that I need to eat more than once. And even with that, I do 1 day fasting, 3 day fasting multiply times, and 1 time 10-day fasting when I just drink basically liquid. So would you tell us about fasting and how is that benefiting us, or what are the fasting options that we can have and stories that you know?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Fasting is a very, very powerful tool to regenerate your body. There's a process. It's actually called autophagy. Autophagy. It actually literally means you're eating your own dead cells. So by fasting, you really kind of need to fast for at least 16 hours for that process to kick in. 16 hours is about where autophagy starts. You don't have to do it every day. I do 16 hours very often, and on occasion I'll do 24 hours. Sometimes I'll do 2 days or 3 days. I don't usually need to do much more because I have a very low body fat percentage now. I average about 11% body fat. If you have higher body fat, you can go longer. I don't need it. But the autophagy is phenomenal. You're eating up free radicalized cells. These are cells that mutate into cancer. These are cells that are contributing to aging. Fasting is actually probably the only method that you could reverse the clock. Very little, but you're reversing the clock. You're actually reversing aging. Your DNA structure with the telomeres are actually improving based on autophagy. So autophagy is an immunity booster. Talking about that subject, it is probably not ideal to go too far during the coronavirus. If you fast for more than 3 days now, you actually create cortisol too. There's a stress hormone that kicks in. It's actually perfectly fine, but at this point, you probably optimized anywhere from 16 to 48 hours. Outside of this coronavirus, I would say you should consider a 3-day fast at least 3 days. I mean, 3 times, maybe 4 times a year. You mentioned you go 7 days sometimes. You definitely it is a purification process. You'll be in full ketosis after 3 days, and when you're at 7 days, you've got 4 or 5 additional days of ketosis.
And I just want to remind the viewers that please don't jump into fasting or a brand new eating habit without consulting your medical professional. what is the best for you, because every human being is so different, every physical body is different. So please consult your medical professional before you jump into any type of fasting or any type of new eating habits or dietary supplements that you want to take in. So I have one more question that Eli Oop asked. Do you know what percentage of carbs in your diet are necessary for muscle building, and what foods would you recommend?
Well, carbs are not necessary for muscle building. Carbs are necessary for energy, and your muscles store carbs in the form of glycogen. Glycogen gives energy. If you want to do resistance training, or you're doing activities that require movements like resistance training, then it comes in handy. A weightlifter, a super bodybuilder weightlifter, an Olympic athlete that's using fast twitch muscles actually benefit from glycogen, muscle glycogen. You don't need it. If you're a marathoner, you can actually do really well. You can almost do better with the ketones, using ketones as energy. You got a whole refrigerator on your body, and it stays with you. I do not get a crash or a wall. Most people that are not fat adapted, meaning ketogenic, they're good for about 4 hours, and they have to eat. They're famished. You feel lightheaded. You feel a lack of energy. Your cognitive ability decreases. When you're ketogenic, it doesn't exist. I am always sharp. When I'm awake, I'm sharp. I don't get, if I eat, let's say at 3 o'clock, my first meal, that's my breakfast. I eat. I kind of feel like, all right, it's time to eat. But I could forego it without a problem. And that's, I'm 16, 17, 18 hours into not eating. It's not an issue. When you're a carb eater, you're suffering. You could do it. Obviously, we're built to do it. Believe it or not, babies enter the world ketogenic. We are designed to be ketogenic. We're 40 million years in the making. We hunt. We may not get an animal for several days until the next hunt, or fish, or graze. Our body could do it. As a matter of fact, it's conditioned to do it, and it wants to do it. It's so convenient now in modern society to have processed food that's convenient. A lot of people pack their lunch to go to work or school. I don't even do that. I don't worry about it. I don't need to do food prepping. I'll have tea in the morning. I don't do coffee. I find that's giving me an allergic response that creates eczema. I love coffee. I think coffee is actually a wonderful product. It has a lot of phytochemicals. It's very antioxidant. But I used to have coffee. I have tea now. I have tea in the morning, maybe a little bit of stevia monk fruit, and I'm good until 12, 1, 2, or 3 o'clock. And if it's not convenient to have food, I wait till I get home and I'll cook my dinner. No problem. And I have to say, it's so convenient. My cognitive ability is exactly the same all the way through. So I would consider this a performance diet as well. Cognitive performance, physical performance. Attila, I was swimming with you. I found that after doing keto, my times in workout, probably not in a race, but in workout, were faster than when I was swimming 5 hours a day in high school. I'm 53 years old. I'm absolutely amazed at the performance that I could do.
I'm amazed too. I envy you because I cannot even keep up with you.
Well, you had other reasons.
That's true.
You'll be there. You're going to blow me away. Your form, your experience, you'll be there.
Anyway, I'm in the 48 days of quarantine right now. And what would you recommend to read in books for the viewers besides the movie that we just showed, the Fat documentary in Prime? But what kind of books would you recommend to read it for in these times when we are at home?
Well, I have a whole library of books, but there are two in particular that come to mind. The first keto book I ever bought, and that's what kind of enlightened me, is a book called Keto Zone Diet by Dr. Colbert. It is kind of, it gives you a perspective of what the ketogenic diet really means, what it does physiologically, but it's not too geeky. It doesn't give you heavy science. It's actually an easy read, but it tells you about how important it is to be compliant. And if you're not compliant, how devastating it will be. It is the ancient way. We were ketogenic before 10,000 years ago. We were all ketogenic for most of the 40 million years of our history based on archaeological research. The second book is a book by somebody I really admire, Dr. Ken Berry. He has a great YouTube channel. He wrote a book called Lies My Doctor Told Me. And it basically, it kind of opens your eyes on some of the methods and some of the financial processes of medicine. And it's not really there for your health. It's there for money. And he's a doctor. He's a family medicine doctor that has opened his eyes. He always professed, eat less, exercise more. You're doing it wrong if you're overweight. If your cholesterol is high, it's because of what you're doing. You're not following the protocol. Eat less, exercise more. Eat more carbs, less fat, less red meat. And it's exactly the opposite. So he started, as he aged, he got to middle age and he started to develop, metabolic syndrome, and he gained weight. And he thought, all right, I got to get disciplined. And he couldn't do it. He was disciplined. He tried to eat the way we're told to eat. It didn't work. It won't work. So he did research, as a doctor would. He's a scientist. And what he found is, obviously, he started with paleo. There's a diet called the Paleolithic diet. In honesty, the Paleolithic diet is an ancient way of eating. They do incorporate carbs in the Paleolithic diet. The Paleolithic a man probably didn't eat carbs like that, but they incorporate sweet potato, maybe rice, other carbohydrates. But it is primarily whole, wild meats, mostly, and a lot of vegetables. I'm a big proponent of most vegetables. You kind of have to experiment with yourself. I love broccoli. I love cauliflower. I do boil it. I try to get the oxalates out as much as I can. But I have to be honest, I'm mostly carnivore. But the progression is paleo, then, low carb, paleo, then the ketogenic diet, and then carnivore. I find my results are probably more profound with a carnivore. I have no inflammation. I have tons of energy. It's incredible, but you kind of have to adapt to it. There's no real science that proves nutrient deficiencies. Scurvy is a concern, that a lot of people state with carnivore, where it's a lack of vitamin C. Well, when pirates or sailors were on ships and they would eat a lot of meat, they actually also ate a lot of carbs. They didn't have vitamin C. The carbs actually counteract the C that you may have. What I mean by C is vitamin C, that you may have in the organ meats of the animal. So if you're a pure carnivore, that scurvy issue would never occur. One more thing when it comes to coronavirus and immunity. Vitamin C is powerful, but not vitamin C that you typically buy as a capsule. That's not bioavailable. You'll just pee it right out. Vitamin C that's more bioavailable would be rosehip tea. You could buy rosehip on Amazon, puree it, and it becomes kind of a beautiful, almost like a tomato paste. You boil that, you puree it, and it is high in vitamin C. Bell pepper, very high in vitamin C. It's very bioavailable. Ascorbic acid is not. So intravenous vitamin C actually could be a phenomenal treatment for any coronavirus, any virus for that matter. We just don't really profess that very much. Zinc zinc is powerful for immunity boosting. Believe it or not, lamb has a very high amount of zinc. I love lamb. That's my dessert.
That's my favorite food too. I love lamb too.
Oh yeah. Some people don't like the gaminess, but I have to tell you, rack of lamb, it's not that
amazing.
gamey.
After when this COVID quarantine is gone, we should go out and eat lamb one night.
Oh, you got it. Oh, that would be amazing. We'll definitely do that. It's a
Richard,
deal.
This was very, very informative, and thank you for coming us to Cognitive Living Room and share your wisdom and knowledge with us. And I really loved it, and we hope we can do it again sometime. Thank you.
Thank you, Attila. You're a gracious host. I appreciate it.
So that's it for today, folks, and I hope you liked our show. And if you did like it, please click on subscribe button down below so we can notify you when our next new video coming along. It's gonna be exciting, and I hope to see you there. Strength and honor. I'm Spartacus.